Joined now by the head gymnastics coach at Army West Point, Doug Van Everen. Doug, how are you doing? And especially during these crazy times, how are you trying to keep in contact with some of your cadets and the athletes on the gymnastics team?
Well, thanks for having me, Zach. But yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting. And certainly now with all the technology, we regularly stay in touch with the guys, individually and then as a team, at least once a week. But as far as like our basic schedule goes, I mean, the kids are obviously in class as normal and so forth. And for us, really it's like we're doing the kind of the same things that we would normally be doing at the end of the season. Of course, it's 6 weeks earlier. So, really a lot of the recruiting bit, like the planning for next year, getting our budgets figured out, the travel, our training schedule and things like that. So, I mean, it hasn't changed a whole lot. It's just given us a little more focus on all of that much earlier than we had planned.
Well, you can look forward to next year. And I guess the first official competition event on your schedule is the next West Point Open in January 2021. And that's an event that's gained a lot of traction and become kind of a staple in January at the United States Military Academy. And you're the one who created it. So just give us a little bit of background on that event. How did it start and how's it kind of grown into the massive event that it is today?
Yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, this year is going to be special. It's the 30th anniversary. So, when I first came to West Point, I was at San Jose State before, and they had an open event there, the Spartan Open. And so as soon as I got here, I knew I wanted to do that right away. And so, I had to wait a year before I kind of kicked it off. The initial early years of the West Point Open were a little more trying as far as like, everything was kind of like an emergency here or there, as far as like the organization. But now, certainly with like the incredible alumni support that we've gained over the years, we've got this really well-oiled machine cranking out a lot of energy. And so it's definitely just grown and grown and grown every year. I mean, it usually fills up, in July. And then, we essentially have a waiting list. So a lot of fun, but again, it's the alumni that have really helped make it special.
It's one of my favorite events to attend every year at West Point, the Friday night competition with the teams, the Saturday with the individuals. And looking back at last year's West Point Open, you guys had your first individual champion since Jesse Glenn when Matthew Davis won the parallel bars. How's it been watching him through his first 2 years of collegiate competition? And where does he rank in terms of the most talented gymnast you've been able to coach? Because he's doing things now in his sophomore year that are really starting to make guys pop and draw a lot of attention to himself on the national level.
Well, that's just it. So first off, the young man, came in as a two-time junior national team member. And so really all of the best kids that we've had here at West Point that I've coached, they've all in one way, shape, or form competed on that junior national team. And so Steve Marshall would be like the first example. And he ended up doing great. And he ended up making the senior national team. And then, of course, Brian Lee was in the same boat that jumped into the world-class athlete program. Jesse, cranked, made it to, the championships of the USA. And, he's like, I don't know, about a 10-time Eastern champ as well. Matt Davis is like a very unique, special kid. He's not only is he very, very talented, but he competes extraordinarily well. He's, in fact, so the more pressure he's on, the better he does, which is a pretty cool quality. And certainly for somebody in the military, that's what you want, somebody that doesn't get ruffled by, stress or distractions or anything else. I mean, he's able to just totally focus and just get things done. And he gets it done, incredibly well and at the right time. So we got a long way to go with him, and we got some big goals for him. So I think we just got to keep moving forward.
Well, I'm sure one of those goals you have for Matthew Davis is to get him to build on the career he's already had. And it's kind of started last year at the NCAA championships where he did advance to the final day of competition. But let's take a look back at the NCAA championship that West Point hosted a few years ago. And my one vivid memory of that is 4,500, 5,000 people out on the plane, all doing cartwheels at the same time.
Yeah.
And that idea, I believe it was yours to kind of promote, but where'd you get that idea? Like, hey, let's bring a Guinness World Record here at West Point to promote the NCAA championships.
Well, okay, so my idea was to try to like promote like the best we could the championship with like kind of a limited budget to do so. And so I knew that there was already a Guinness record for cartwheels. And I talked to my buddy and graduate, Dave Fulton, and we kind of decided, you know, we should just do this. I mean, all the cadets at West Point, they have to do gymnastics in one way, shape, or form. So it wasn't like we'd have to really teach them anything necessarily. You know, you just do a cartwheel. Well, so it sounded all good in theory like that until we started realizing how much work it took to actually get it done. So it took about 2 years to do, honestly. And one of the things that kind of kicked the whole thing, you know, before we could really do a whole lot with it was like, okay, we got to get buy-in from the leadership. And so as it turned out, one of the commandants that actually was a good friend of mine, JT Thompson, he was a neighbor of mine when he was a captain. And so I talked to him when he was the comm. I said, listen, I want to do this, but I need your support. And then, of course, our athletic director, Boo, he said, Doug, whatever, you could do whatever, you know. And so then it went up to the soup and they approved it. All right. So then the hard work started where we had to start dealing with the Guinness people and, you know, to formalize everything that we were going to do. And then quite honestly, up until the day of, you know, we kept just kind of figuring things out like, okay, how are we going to pull this off sort of a deal. And that morning that we did it, we had like essentially organized all these quadrants of 50. And so we had these little flags put out all over the parade field and in groups of 50. And so you had to have one judge for each group of 50. So we ended up with like, I think the record says that we had, it was under 3,000, but in any case, so that's a lot of flags and they were all over the plane. And then I remember like, you know, one of the guys gave me the microphone and said, okay, coach, here you go. And by the way, the soup wants to talk to you to find out what we're doing. And I'm like, oh my God, I gulped and I'm like, okay, well, I tell you what. So General Caslin came over and I said, okay, well, there's the flag and everyone's just going to face the flag and we're going to do cartwheels. All right. So we're going to just like make it happen. So it actually worked like incredibly well. Like I was just shocked, honestly. And but the scary part of doing a Guinness record is if there's more than 10% failures, you lose the whole record. You don't get anything. Even if you did break a record, you still lose out. And so I don't know if they were really looking that hard at a perfect cartwheel necessarily, but we had to film it. We had to have a turnstile that we could get kids in there. The other thing I did was I ended up talking with the principal at the elementary and middle school on post, and I told them I wanted the kids involved, and so they ended up making a health fitness day, and essentially that was the end of that. And so they ended up allowing me to have the kids. So we had about 250 kids in addition to all the cadets. So all in all, when it was all said and done, you know, I told the cadets, pick up the flags, please. It took us about 4 hours to get them out there, but that was their souvenir for doing that event. And I don't think I'll ever do that again, though.
Well, that's got to be one of the many memorable moments you've had as head coach here at West Point over a 30-year career. Where does that rank? Is that the top moment, or is there something else that kind of sticks out as, wow, this is the thing I'm going to remember most in at least my first 30 years as a coach here?
Well, I'd have to say like two things, really. I mean, in 2011, my son graduated. He was not a gymnast. But like going through the senior year where before like he was a cadet and at West Point, you know, when my team members would tell me, hey, we were doing this or we have these events, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. I'll just see you later. All right. But then, you know, when it's your son going through, you know, my wife and I took part in all of these things, and it was just totally fantastic. I mean, you realize the impact that West Point does and so forth. The other thing I would have to say is just the alumni. You know, just that has been the best part of the whole thing, other than, of course, working with the cadets, and they keep you young and crazy. But the alumni and the fact that they stay in touch and in tune with the program routinely is just like, it's just incredibly rewarding. They want to stay connected, stay involved, and give back, and they do.
Well, Doug, thanks for a couple of minutes and talking to us, and hope you're staying safe and your family's well during these crazy times right now.
Well, you as well, Zach. It was my pleasure, and I hope you all have a great day, and hopefully we can get things back rolling in the gym before too long.
Well, I'll see you back at West Point, hopefully very soon, Doug. Thanks for a couple of minutes.
All right. Take care now.